the club going up on a Tuesday. We here on a Tuesday. So, I left off yesterday's show. Last topic I was going over was the Chuck Clark signing and said I wanted to hit on a couple more things regarding that for today's show. So we got that. Couple extra things from training camp as well we'll go over. Nothing crazy. But with this Chuck Clark signing, I think the main message, it's not even the Chuck Clark signing, but it's more or less the theme of the Steeler moves throughout this whole offseason. And that is depth matters. Like, we are going to have a roster where if someone gets hurt and they're going to miss a period of time, whether it's a game or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, extended period of time, we're going to make it work. It's not going to be devastating. You guys as fans aren't going to notice too much difference. There's certain guys like TJ Watt, his impact will be felt no matter what. But any of these starters, if they got to miss time, the damage will be minimized because of how good our depth is. And I was watching the Steelers-Packers game in 2009, a few weekends ago. Just randomly had it on in the backdrop. Was chilling. It might have been on a Saturday or something. But I was like, in honor of Aaron Rodgers being here, I'm in the football mood. I'm ready to get football back. Let me just throw this on. I think I was listening to music too. I think it was watching the game with the sound off. Almost like Mac Miller, the album, watching movies with the sound off. Watching old NFL football with the sound off. And it was a vibe. But what I noticed about that Steelers team, and that wasn't a team that won a Super Bowl, but that was in the Super Bowl era from the mid-2000s to the early 2010s. That was one of those teams. What I noticed was we had a lot of depth on that squad. Whenever they were going over the starting lineups, we were missing some guys. We were missing Polamalu. We had Tyrone Carter there. Now, I know Tyrone Carter wasn't perfect or anything, but it felt like he was one of those guys that if a Polamalu or one of our safeties missed time, you could plug him in for a few games. Defense would still be one of the top units in the league. And then I think it was on the defensive line, there was an injury, and Travis Kershke was in there. You're like, yeah, Travis Kershke, forgot about him. But I feel like he was one of those dudes that would step in and be a professional and give you starting caliber type of snaps. A bunch of other names that come to mind from those teams, like that era, 05 all the way up to, like I said, 2010, 2011, 2012. Particularly on defense. Chris Hoke wasn't a starter. Would give you starters type of minutes. I already mentioned Tyrone Carter, a Mike Logan, Willie Gay. Now, I think technically he was like our starting slot corner. Brett Kiesel early on, and then he developed into a starter. And I already mentioned like a Travis Kershke. I felt like those defenses, those teams had a ton of depth where if there was an injury here or there, and Polamalu got injured a fair amount. And Polamalu is one of those guys, like I mentioned with TJ Watt. That impact's going to be felt. But we still had, when missing Polamalu, it felt like, you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, a top defense in the league while he was gone because of a guy like a Tyrone Carter. If a couple guys were missing on our defensive line, Chris Hoke, Travis Kershke, Brett Kiesel, they would step in and you felt like you weren't really missing a beat. You kind of forgot one of your starters were injured. And that's not even a specific Steelers thing when you're talking about a championship team requiring depth. I feel like if you look at all these teams that make it to the Super Bowl or win Super Bowls over the last 10, 15 years, probably throughout the course of NFL history, not only do they have great quarterback play, you typically got your franchise quarterback, especially recently, especially over the last 20, 25 years. You need that. You need a solid defense, but you need depth. Because injuries happen. You could talk about these Mahomes Chiefs teams, the Eagles team from last year. If they have an injury or two, it isn't devastating. But I haven't felt like that's been the case for this Steelers team. You could talk both offense and defense over the last 4 or 5 seasons. Whenever someone's missing, it's like, oh shit, we're screwed. Like if TJ Watt gets hurt, oh, we're screwed. If Minka Fitzpatrick gets hurt, if one of our starting corners, a couple starting corners get hurt, you're like, oh, we're screwed. Like, we're going to have to scrap and claw to get out of the state. Like, this is devastating. I don't remember going over the injury reports as detailed. Now, it's different with social media and the 24/7 access and coverage. I get that too. I was going to say that. I just don't. I don't remember going as much over details or going over the injury list as in detailed from back in the day. Like hanging on pins and needles if this guy's going to be playing or not. Now, I think that's credit to how good those teams were and how much depth that we had back in the day with those Steeler teams. In that late Bill Cowher, early Mike Tomlin era. Versus now where every week, is this guy practicing? Is this guy limited? How devastating is it going to be if he's not out here for this week? Like this is going to change from us being potential favorites or feeling like we can actually win this thing to we got no chance. Now, again, I think part of that is just due to the constant coverage, the 24/7 coverage. But I think you kind of get my point into how our roster, whenever we were legitimate Super Bowl contenders, how it was constructed versus how it has been constructed over the last 3-4 seasons versus how we look in this 2025 season with depth. I feel like we fixed that issue with these signings. Chuck Clark is one of those dudes. Brandon Echols is one of those dudes. Malik Harrison is one of those dudes. And then you could talk about on offense how, even with DK Metcalf, that trade, as the top guy, we have depth after him with Jonnu Smith, with two talented receivers in Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, 3 capable running backs, Aaron Rodgers. And then, you know what? I didn't even mention this when talking about those old Steeler teams, like Charlie Batch as your backup, feeling like if Ben missed a couple games, you can get out of a stadium. Depth at the quarterback position as well. We got Rodgers, but Mason Rudolph. We got out of a couple stadiums with Mason Rudolph if Rodgers got to miss a couple games. But yeah, that defense, man, we got the 3 corners. Tomlin said are going to be out on the field no matter what with JPJ, Darius Slay, and Jalen Ramsey. Combine that with our top 2 safeties, Juan Thornhill, Sean Elliott. We just signed Chuck Clark. But think of the rest of the depth in that secondary room. Beanie Bishop, who is coming off a 4-interception rookie season, plus Brandon Echols, who we brought over from the Jets. Corey Trice, we're hearing good reports from him in training camp. The only problem with him is he just can't stay healthy. Hopefully that can change this year. And then James Pierre is your 8th guy in that secondary room. 8th or 9th guy after adding Chuck Clark. My God, I don't know. There's going to have to be cuts. That's the unfortunate part. But ton of depth, secondary. Ton of depth at linebacker. Inside linebacker. Patrick Queen. Peyton Wilson. Don't forget Cole Holcomb as your 3rd guy. Cole Holcomb as your 3rd guy. At edge rush, TJ, Highsmith, Herbig. Drafted Jack Sawyer. Defensive line, that was one of the big things we were complaining about after that Ravens wildcard loss. Derrick Henry was running all over the place. We need to fix that defensive line. We need to get physical. We need to get back to smash mouth Steeler football. Draft Derek Harmon in the 1st round. We got Y.A. Black. Cam Hayward's back. Bring in Daniel Aquale, journeyman. Keanu Benton going into year 3. Hopefully he takes a step. So, do Marvin Leal, he's going to be healthy. So, ton of depth on this team. I think if Darius Slay got to miss a game or two, with us having Brandon Echols here, Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter, a Beanie Bishop, a Corey Trice, the addition with Chuck Clark at safety, we'll be able to somehow figure it out in the secondary. I don't think we're going to be missing a beat like that. We're not going to be stressing like we have in the past with some of these starters going down and we feel like it's the end of the world. So I think it's again, just credit to Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, and how they've constructed this roster this offseason. There's a championship formula here. It really is. Elite quarterback play. We have Aaron Rodgers. So We could talk about how he hasn't been the same Aaron Rodgers over the last couple years. But there's a chance we get elite quarterback play out of Aaron Rodgers because it's still Aaron Rodgers. And I've talked about that all offseason. You're taking a swing that he's returning to form. Not out of the realm of possibility by any stretch of the imagination. So there's that. Elite quarterback play. This is the championship formula. You need elite quarterback play. You need a franchise quarterback, that type of guy. Someone that you know is capable of getting it done in the playoffs. 2-minute drills, late in game situations, all that type of stuff. Aaron Rodgers, one of the all-time greats. Need depth. I just went over how our depth is very much bolstered for this season. The only thing that maybe you could question the depth on is our offensive line, and I'll get to that later with Broderick Jones because there's some stuff coming out of camp with him that isn't too positive, unfortunately. And then just having a top defense, like a very capable defense. Like you need that. We could talk about how it is an offensive league, and maybe you should start allocating more money to offense. So much of it's quarterback driven. You need a defense that's able to step up, at least be timely. And I think this defense should be capable of that as well. Like that we should have no issues there with the talent that we brought in. Because you look at, even though the Chiefs, not necessarily a top 5 defense, very timely defense, very bend but don't break defense, very clutch defense in some of these Super Bowl runs with Mahomes. Look at the Eagles' defense last year. You could look at all these teams that have won Super Bowls recently. It's a lot about the quarterback, but defense is still a part of it too. It's football. It's the ultimate team game. So I'd be remiss if you look at Joe Burrow and the Bengals last year. Joe Burrow, Bengals offense lit it up. You saw what their defense did. Like your defense, no matter how good your offense is, can still limit you in your championship hopes, depending on how good or how bad it is. So let's not get it twisted. You still need a defense. You still need something. You need something that's competent out there. But as I said, I think we hit every checkbox, those 3 checkboxes, for a championship caliber team that is legitimately in the mix. Now we got to see how it plays out. You got to see how we execute all those cliches. But I'm loving what the Steelers did this offseason. And Chuck Clark, that signing, is the latest example of it. A couple more things. This is kind of random, but we know Alex Kozora, right? Steelers Depot writer. Like, really good at his job. Really good. He goes to training camp every year and breaks down from the stands what's going on. We'll give you stats and play-by-plays, all that stuff. Just crazy work. Just excellent work. Shout out to him. He posted something on Twitter that I thought was worth noting here. I thought it was worth reacting to. And that was in the last decade, or I think he's been to, like he said, 10 or 11 training camps. Over the last decade, none of the other camps he's been to has been as busy or has been as crowded as the one this year. I think that says something, man. Again, it almost goes hand in hand with what I was just talking about, how the Steelers have built up this roster with the depth and the excitement, because this ain't happening if the Steelers don't make these moves. The excitement isn't there. The energy, the vibes, the positivity isn't there if we don't do what we did this offseason with the DK trade, the Jalen Ramsey trade, Darius Slay, Aaron Rodgers, the draft. I could go on and on. The excitement's not there if we don't do that. So, again, credit to Khan, credit to Tomlin, because what did we say when the offseason first started? Minutes, hours after that wild card loss. We got to blow this up. There needs to be change. And if that includes Tomlin, it's fair to say things run their course. It might be time. But then we understood Tomlin wasn't going to be fired. We brought back basically the whole coaching staff. And you're like, okay, what change is going to happen then? Because change needs to happen. If we bring back the coaching staff, there still needs to be fundamental change. We need new quarterback play in here. We need to bolster up the defensive line. We need to do a lot. And we did that. We did that because if we didn't make those changes, I guarantee what Alex Kozora is tweeting out here and how packed training camp is, it wouldn't be. It might be the opposite, actually. He might be tweeting out that this is the lightest crowd I've seen over the last decade. If we just would have ran it back with Russ and kept Pickens and only made a little move or two on defense, I guarantee you, because we have actual championship aspirations now. There's legit championship hope. We can win this division. We can go toe-to-toe with the Ravens, the Bengals, offensively and defensively, roster for roster. In fact, I mean, with this Chuck Clark addition, if you really look at our roster, I mean, yeah, I'll put us up against anyone in not only the AFC North, but the AFC. Just look at the depth chart. Again, it's got to come to fruition. Rodgers got to play like Rodgers. There's certain things that do need to happen, but whenever you're just looking at the rosters, looking at the names, looking at the capabilities, yeah, I'll put us up there with anyone. And the crowd reflects that. The crowd reflects that. A couple more things from training camp. Broderick Jones, not looking his greatest. Now, we're not in pads yet, so take that for what you will. Put stock in as much or as little as you want in some of the clips that are out there of Broderick getting beat, because, yeah, it feels like almost every offensive clip that I'm seeing. Rodgers is lucky that this is training camp and just practice and not pads or anything like that. No one's going to be hitting Rodgers. He's lucky because I feel like he would have been put on his ass there a couple of times. Would have been taking some big shots because, yeah, not off to the greatest of starts from what it looks like. But again, not in pads. Take that for what you will. But then Broderick got injured on the last day of camp, which was Sunday, his last practice before the Steelers get the opportunity to go into pass. So I doubt we're going to see him. It's a soft tissue injury. Stock down for Broderick. This is unfortunate. Everything I've been saying glowingly about the Steelers could all be for naught, or could all be kind of derailed if Broderick Jones isn't playing at least at an average level at left tackle. And I was talking about depth. O-line is the one thing where we are hurting a little bit at depth, because if Broderick's out, what the hell are we doing at left tackle? We got to move Fautanu back to left tackle, and then we put Dylan Cook over on right tackle. I don't know, man. I really don't know. But we got to pray that Broderick Jones is healthy and Broderick Jones could at least give us average left tackle play. Because from the looks of it, thus far, the start of training camp here hasn't been looking too great. I'll reserve judgment for the pads and also for at least the regular season, because with Broderick Jones, it doesn't really matter too much what happens in training camp. It's going to count regular season. Now, he can give us more reason for optimism or pessimism in the meantime, but with our roster the way that it is, this is all about regular season, games that matter, playoffs. I don't even need to see, honestly, I don't need to see Aaron Rodgers in preseason. I don't need to see DK Metcalf preseason. I don't need to see Jalen Ramsey preseason. Darius Slay. We have so many veterans, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Patrick Queen. I don't need to see any of these guys in preseason. I just don't. I know there's something to be said for building the chemistry. They're on a new team, all that stuff, but I prefer to just be fully healthy. I continually say that when talking about preseason games and determining who should play and who shouldn't play. Just be healthy for week one. If you want to get some snaps in the third preseason game or something, so be it. But yeah, I ain't really stressing about what happens in preseason, especially with this roster and the veterans. There isn't. Honestly, I was talking about this over the weekend with someone. There's no one really. Yeah, there's no one really I'm that eager to see in preseason like that, because it's not going to have too much bearing for this upcoming regular season, just because of how our roster is. Will Howard's going to be cool to see, but let's just be real. We're not going to actually see him this year. Like, he's just doing some auditions for next offseason. Like, who else? I mean, I guess Jack Sawyer, some of the rookies. Jack Sawyer, Derek Harmon, the Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin dynamic, I guess you could bring up. But a lot of the other newcomers that typically you're really excited for preseason, it's like, I'm good. I know who these guys are. I know who Jonnu Smith is. I know who DK Metcalf is, Aaron Rodgers. Caleb Johnson, I guess that'll be cool. But I think you see what I'm saying here. It's just like the main guys, the dudes that we need to do what they need to do for the regular season for this thing to be a success. It's like, my opinion's not going to change on them via preseason. Now, I guess there are going to be other newcomers, but a lot of them are the young guys or the rookies, and that is a natural occurrence every offseason, every preseason anyway. Nothing unique to this one. Zach Frazier, speaking of O-line, the snaps still bad. Dude's got to figure this out. Because last year it was bad. It almost cost us a couple games. I think it cost us the Colts game. Because at the end of it, Fields got us back into one score. We had the ball, minute something left. And then we get a shitty snap, and that just screws up the whole sequence of the rest of the offense series and all that. And we get the fourth down, and that was the game. So, yeah, Zach Frazier, some of these snaps were popping up last year, and there was back and forth. Who's this on? Frazier, the quarterback. We got a new quarterback. Bad snaps are still happening. And this is multiple. It wasn't just one in training camp. I saw reports it was multiple bad snaps. He said he's going to figure it out. Yeah, got to. Definitely got to. I think those are the two question marks on the offensive line. Completely forgot about Frazier's bad snaps. But now we got to talk about it. The two question marks are Broderick Jones, what's he going to do? And now Zach Frazier, could he get the snaps taken care of? Outside of that, I like where our offensive line is trending. But yeah, bro, we know you're going to be a staple on this team for the next decade. We know you're probably going to be Pro Bowl, All-Pro guy. But let's get these snaps right, man. Let's get these fundamentals right, because this cannot be it. This cannot be it. Especially with Rodgers at 41 years old. We can't be having him chase all over the place for the ball and potentially take an errant hit that gets him hurt, gets him knocked out. Can't be having that. Speaking of Rodgers, last thing, he's saying everything right. He's bought in. Even with an interview with Kyle Brandt, he was asked about Bradshaw's comments from like a month ago, where Bradshaw was like, I don't want Rodgers. Steelers trying to get Rodgers in here. It's an absolute joke. This and that. I don't want him. It's probably going to happen. He needs to just go chew on bark somewhere and talk to the gods. Rodgers had an excellent response to that in dealing with a legend too. Like, Bradshaw's a legend. Like, you don't want to be going and having a back and forth with a Steeler legend like Terry Bradshaw. But he laughed it off and was like, he gave Terry his proper respect. Here's the answer.
Well, I whisper to the gods every single day.
Damn right.
I've known Terry for a long time, being a part of Fox. Terry's a legend. He's an absolute legend. He won 4 Super Bowls. He's had a legendary career in the media. But Terry, like a lot of people, doesn't know me. And so he's got an idea of what he thinks about me based on what I've done, the documentary, what I've said, Darkness Retreat, whatever the hell you want to talk about. I'd love to get to know Terry on a deeper level. And I feel like if he gave me a chance to get to know him, that we'd have a good friendship, because for me, I have nothing but the utmost amount of respect and deference for what the greats have done, because they laid the foundation for us to be able to play in this great game, to be paid like kings, and to carry on the tradition of excellence that guys like the Bradshaws of the world in the 70s and Bart Starr in the 60s and Lombardi and Joe Montana and Steve Young and Troy Aikman and Brett Favre and all the greats that have been over, Tom Brady. We're standing on the backs of those guys, and it's because of how they played and how they carried themselves that we're able to have this opportunity to to still play this great game, to get paid really well, to set ourselves up for our future. So I'd love to get to know Terry on a deeper level if he's open to it, and maybe we can go chew some bark or whatever the hell he's talking about together.
So it seems like Rodgers, as I said, really bought into being a Steeler, saying doing everything right. Offense has had its hiccups, but I think that's just more of a natural thing. You still see the good highlights coming from Rodgers, some of the passes, and good things coming from offense, but I think they've been, based off the reports, a little bit more inconsistent versus the defense. Defense looks like it's really gaining some momentum. It's already starting to find some of its identity even this early in training camp. So I'm excited to see what happens once they get into pads, which will be today, probably in the next hour or so. And I'll react to that either tonight or tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. But that's it for today's show. Let me know your thoughts about everything I went over down in the comments. Stay chilling. Peace.